Evening, what? Anything will start with I think.
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता
Good evening. Secretary C.R. Krishnan, Secretary C. Martin Joseph, other committee members, and welcome to last seminar of this seminar series. We are conducting the digital seminar after a gap of 5 months. It gives me immense pleasure to see you all here. Today's subject is analysis of section 148 and 148. According to section 148 of the IT Act, any income tax computation that has not been recomputed or reassessed will receive a notice from the IT department. Section 148 of the Income Tax Act deals with the issuance of a notice wherein any income tax estate recomputation or assessment. Newly inserted provision before issuing a notice, housing officer is required to comply with procedure under section 148. Earlier to 1/4/2021, before issue of notice under section 148, reason recorded by housing officer was the requirement. Now, from 1/4/2021, issue of notice under section 148A, which is an opportunity to associate to explain this stage when revenue request is to be reopened. We will get on this section from our speaker. Now it's my pleasure to talk our eminent speaker, C.R. Krishnan. Once again, I will welcome all the members who have joined us physically or online. On this occasion, we are honoring our own branch speaker, C.R. Krishnan, for his support to the branch activities. Martin will tell in detail.
Duty is to give a brief introduction. An oxymoron, because the person who is more familiar with the people of Alappuzha branch, but I am forced to do that one. With your permission, I am reading this small profile. C.R. Krishnan, M.Com FCA, is the last son of late C.L. Bengamani, Chartered Accountant, who was the founder of Messrs. Bengamani and Company, one of the pioneer firms of chartered accountants in the state of Kerala. He joined his father and brother C.R. Srinivasan, the partner of this firm in the year 1987, and is now the managing partner of the 60-year-old firm. His wife is Prabha Krishnan, and he has two sons, Bharat and Darshak, and a daughter, Diksha Krishnan. He has headed several organizations and has been involved in various capacities in social, cultural, and educational fields. To list a few, he was the chairman of the RP branch of Southern India Regional Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He is the president of RP Management Association, past chairman of Travancore Chamber of Commerce, trustee of Sanatana Dharma Vidyashara, founded by his great grandfather in the year 1905. At present, he is in charge of SPB English Medium School, a CBSE initiative of Vidyashara, has represented the trade and commerce sector by being a member of the Direct Tax Advisory Committee. He is the joint secretary of Indian Bank Subject Tribunal Bar Association Kochi. He is an active Rotarian since 1988 and was the assistant governor of Rotary District 3211 in 2005-06. Cricket is his passion. He had toured Kerala Veterans cricket team to Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore. He has represented Kerala State junior cricket teams and was the vice captain of Kerala University cricket team in 1981. His professional interest centers around that taxation. He has presented several professional seminars and conferences in various places. Before I conclude this profile, I just want to bring it to your kind attention that yesterday we did a small exercise. We asked leaders of branch in charge to take the details of CP seminars for which CAR Krishnan was the faculty, and we, to our surprise, the total hours, CP hours, for which R. Krishnan was faculty in Alappuzha was 8. When I shared this information with him, and we in turn inquired about his CP events organized by other branches and other committees organized by other branches, and it came around 120 hours. So around 200 hours of a vibrant, fine quality delivery from CR Krishnan at various platforms of ICA. And we personally believe that is a rare kind of a member among us who personally devote his valuable time for the enrichment of his fellow members. And we strongly believe that it is our duty to honor him at an appropriate place and moment. And I request Honorable Chairman of the ICA, C. Rajneesh Murthy, to honor Sri R. Krishnan by adoring like Kannada around this photo. Thank you. Thank you very much.
In fact, today what we see in a webinar, where we're all busy running after one meeting after the other, that was not new for Alleppey branch, even in 80s. So much vibrancy and so much of education that this branch has instilled in its members. I always feel that it's my duty when a call is being received, especially from our home branch, to probably come and share my thoughts. In fact, it is just not sharing one's thoughts or knowledge with somebody else, but as I've been repeatedly telling, each time when you go in for a preparation for a study circle meeting or for a CPE meeting or a seminar, I think you learn a lot. And that matters most. And field of taxation is such that each time you present a paper, maybe the same paper when you go a second round, you would find that what had been delivered or what had been taught at first round was wrong. And there could be a different interpretation of the various provisions. As you know, taxing laws are such that it is capable of several interpretations. And we as professionals, though we try to understand the taxing statute, we'll also try to interpret in the way convenient to us, convenient to our clients, or the way we understand, and then probably try and find out whether there is another meaning embedded in a particular section. My gratitude goes to the chairman and all the managing committee members of this branch for having thought it fit to honor me. Thank you so much, because it's a pride moment for anybody, any member, to be honored by its own branch. And I place on record my sincere gratitude once again to the chairman as well as all the office bearers of this branch. Friends, we are in the last of the webinar series, if you may call so. I've been telling this because when chairman approached with regard to a continuous program, for the simple reason that we are not being able to assemble at our will and pleasure, which we used to be doing here. I did suggest 2 or 3 topics out of the taxation, normal taxation topics. And I'm sure you would have found those topics useful because it is quite relevant as far as a professional, as far as a chartered accountant is concerned today. And as we call the grand finale today, like the Bigg Boss finale, which we all saw, most of you saw. I did have the privilege of seeing that. Normally I don't get an occasion to see such things. But since I was on treatment, I had no other option but to switch on the TV in the evening and had a look at the grand finale. So proceedings, I mean, as technically there is a default, as I said, right, I'll go on. We're all familiar with the word. I have reasons to believe that income chargeable to tax is escaped assessment. A common word that was hitherto being used by the assessing officer with regard to reopening an assessment. And he had to record his reasons in the order sheet. The records of an assessee will have to show as to why an income chargeable, I mean, what are the basis on which the assessing officer forms an opinion that the income of a particular assessee has escaped assessment. And on that basis, he proceeded by probably issuing a notice. In the erstwhile law, he issued a notice under section 148, for which the assessee had to respond by filing a return. Now, from the old law, with effect from 1/4/2021, we are shifting into a completely new procedure. In fact, if you look at the sections, there are not many changes in the section as a whole. But in the procedural aspect, there has been a paradigm shift and a major overhaul, which probably makes this particular section, I'm not sure whether the rigors are more or whether it has been liberalized, something which we'll have to wait and see. Existing sections 147 to 151, some of them have been tampered with, but the major overall comes in the form of an insertion of a new section 148A, which actually defines a procedure with procedure relating to reassessment. We'll quickly recapitulate the old assessment schemes or the old reassessment scheme. As I told you, Section 147 empowered an assessing officer who had reason to believe that income chargeable to tax had escaped assessment to issue notice under Section 148. And the reason to believe must be concrete. It just cannot be a reason to suspect. And he has to record his reasons. And in fact, many being struck down on the simple reason that the reason entertained by the assessing officer to reopen an assessment were not sound reasons. Probably they were reasons to suspect only, or he did not entertain a concrete belief that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. So if you look at it in a nutshell, the assessing officer must have reasons to believe, one, the income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. And then yes, the reasons will have to be recorded in writing in the order sheet, or his reasons will have to be properly recorded, wherein he has formed a belief that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. Now, what really happened was that these reasons were mostly being tested in courts of law, whether it is reason to believe or whether it was reason to suspect. And many times the assessments were getting struck off for the simple reason that the reasons, so-called reasons formed by the assessing officer were not strong enough or concrete enough for an assessment or to fulfill the criteria laid down in the erstwhile section. And AO often mixed up the concept of reason to believe and reason to suspect, and then, wherever there was a mere belief or mere suspicion, that was converted into a form of a belief. And even third party, somebody else, for example, the officer himself had to form an opinion, but in many cases, third party beliefs were treated as beliefs by the assessing officer and assessments were given. So on all these accounts, assessments were being struck down left, right, and center by courts on a challenge by the assessing. Now let us have a look at the grounds, normal grounds that were relied upon by the assessing officer in the past for reopening an assessment. First one was materials in possession of the assessing officer suggesting escapement. That materials may come in different forms. I'm not going into the manner in which the materials come to the possession of the, for example, information from the banks or other agencies, FIUs or whatever it is. There are several ways, or a third-party petition. There are so many ways by which the assessing officer will have information in the possession or in his knowledge that leads to believe that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. So that was one ground. Another prominent ground was a survey and a search where it unearthed undisclosed income not disclosed to the department. And based on the materials found as a result of search, the AO came to the conclusion that income chargeable to tax had escaped assessment within the meaning of Section 147. And after recording the reasons, he got a right or an authority to issue notices under Section 148. Information from other departments and non-filers of returns was a typical, we used to get a lot of notices under Section 148 for people who are not filing the returns of income, and where, the assessing officer on a comparison of the data available in the database of the department, where a lot of TDS and other materials are available, or where, for example, where long bank interest is available as per 26AS and still is a non-filer, and the 26AS indicates that the assessee has income above the minimum liable for tax. On these occasions, certainly there is a belief that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. Connected case information, for example, while A's assessments are being completed, there is some information on B, something, for example, a joint property is sold between A and B, assessing officer A reports to the assessing officer of B, so on and so forth, where the subsequent officer gets information with regard to connected cases. And of course, acting on mere gossip, suspicion, third-party information, change of opinion, audit, objection. These four, I have kept it in a separate slide because the earlier slide you will find are mostly informations which the assessing officer can rely upon to a large extent very concretely to conclude or come to a conclusion that income chargeable to tax is escaped assessment. In the latter slide, you will find that most of them are mere suspicions or it doesn't lead to a concrete belief. So somebody, a paper report says that, ED has caught somebody and ED has given a report that, there is a income escape, and I mean, they have got undisclosed assets to the tune of around, let us say, some 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs or whatever it is on a paper, newspaper information. Without verifying and without getting the materials on the basis of which the ED has actually come to the conclusion, merely on the basis of a paper report, if an assessing officer ventures to probably reopen an assessment, it would be struck down as a mere suspicion or a rumor that has been imported by the assessing officer to form an opinion. It cannot be an opinion that income chargeable to tax is escaped assessment. Similarly, third-party information. Today, you will find that one method, especially in the state of Kerala, if one cannot prosper, I think the best way is to harm somebody. That is quite prominent and associated with our state. Especially, I'm not talking about income tax only. You go to a construction site, somebody is not able to build a house, somebody is building out a house on the next plot. You will put some 10 petitions to the concerned authority saying that he has violated that rule, this rule, and whatnot. So that is so third-party petitions are quite, third-party information or TP, typically third-party petitions to the concerned authority, to the deputy director information or to the assessing officer are a great source of information. And the assessing officer cannot merely believe on them, but sometimes some third-party informations come with concrete evidence. Suppose, for example, somebody sends a bank statement of an assessee along with a complaint, stating that he has unaccounted deposit and he has not filed the tax returns or he has not disclosed a particular income in his tax returns. The assessing officer comes to a conclusion, then it could be a valid information in the possession of the assessing officer to proceed against that assessee. Change of opinion, an earlier officer took a particular stand, and subsequently the assessing officer comes and takes another stand based on probably what he believes that the earlier assessing or his predecessor, whatever stand he has taken, is not in consonance with the provisions of law. It's a change of opinion, and there are several decisions that say that change of opinion is not, it's only an opinion of a person, but it does not lead to a concrete belief that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. There are contrary decisions also to that effect. So change of opinion is in general possession of an assessing officer for the purpose of section 147, S12 147. Audit objection. Common method, because today the assessing officer has got belief that whatever is declared in the return of income is correct, but his hands are tied up. Many times we have faced this as practitioners, we have faced this situation. They'll say, sir, whatever you are saying is right, but then it's an audit objection, especially it's a revenue audit objection. C&AG is not going to drop this. So you better go on appeal and get a relief wherever you want to get a relief. Our hands are actually tied up. So that could, audit objections form a major part of the reopening of the assessment. It formed a major part of the assessments. And everybody is scared of C&AG because ultimately if you don't give effect to an audit objection pointed out by a C&AG, the result would be that you could be booked or proceeded against by your own department, either by the vigilance or in other angle there could be investigation. So officers generally play safe. They don't want to run the risk of being tested by outside agencies or their own internal agencies which have surveillance over them. Now, reasons for introducing new reassessment procedures. So now, by and large, if you look at things that are normally happening, we had a several sections. For example, we were talking of 270 capital A. 271(1)(c) came into the statute. Concealment of income or furnishing of inaccurate particulars. In most of the assessments completed by us, we will find that penalty proceedings under 271(1)(c) is initiated separately. And we used to give a reply. Most of them got dropped. Some of them penalty was being levied. And in many cases, either it was dropped or levied, but levied also in many cases it got struck off for the simple reason that it did not tantamount to concealment as envisaged under the provisions of the Act. So finally what happened was, most of the appeals, most of the penalties got struck down, with the result that the government in its wisdom thought that the old provisions of 271(1)(c) were not bringing in revenue to the department, with the result that they have substituted that with the new provision of section 270 capital A. Similarly, a lot of sections have undergone change. And today, yet another section which we are discussing, 148, the old 148 and the new 148 procedure, though the section has not per se changed, the procedure and the manner in which a reassessment has to be proceeded has overall, it's undergone a totally sea change. Now, can it be said, like in the case of other substitutions, is it a old wine in a new bottle? Or is it a new wine in a new bottle? I wouldn't say old wine in an old bottle, that concept is not there. Or is it's a new wine in a new bottle? I would rather put it as a new wine in a very branded bottle, or rather a polished bottle. It's neither a new bottle, because all the sections, most of the sections continue to remain the same, except that there has been a tinkering of the section. There has been amendment to some of these sections to give way for 148A to be there in place as intended by the statute. Now, the reasons why the old provisions got actually replaced by the new section is that many of the old sections, as I told, got knocked off in appeal. So when the officer had to assess an income, he confused between reason to believe and reason to suspect. And a third party belief was taken as his own belief, and reasons recorded or reasons not properly recorded. All these were taken to the courts of law, and there are a lot of litigations. In fact, many of us also do that. Whether on merits, if there is a case of reopening, we would like to challenge the notice. We made the first ground as far as a reassessment order would be that the reopening of the assessment is bad in law. That would be the normal ground that most of us used to take in appeal as far as a reassessment is concerned. So when most of these most of the assessments got struck down, the government in its wisdom, that's not the only reason. One of the reasons, they thought that a replacement is due as far as that particular section is concerned. Now, the other thing which all of you are aware of is that technology has grown leaps and bounds as far as the department is concerned. Department has embraced technology in such a manner unimaginable. For the last 5 years or 10 years, those of us who are practicing, we never thought 10 years before, 10 years down the line, this is what would be the reservoir of information that is going to be available in the possession of the department. And with the press of the button, earlier on, they had to go somewhere to the bank. Just imagine an inspector, after the officer gets a TP petition, he has to depute his inspector, and that inspector will be having dual charge or 3 charges. In one office, there will be only one inspector. He has to find time. He has to go to the bank. Then bank manager will not be there. Bank manager will say that I'll have to get permission from the zonal office. Then he will take a permission from the zonal office or the regional office. And then by the time this fellow will be on some earned leave or some other thing. And by the time he actually translates the information in his possession to something meaningful, which can actually extract some tax, the time limit for reopening of the assessment would have been over. And under such circumstances, the law, if you initially look at it, it was 6 years, 10 years, 16 years, reopening time. For the reason that department was actually traveling like a snail. But today, with the advent of technology, information technology has with one single stroke of the press of the button, a lot of information is available in the systems, the various systems of the department. And today, in consonance with the requirements of the department, you would find that quarterly returns have to be uploaded, monthly returns have to be uploaded. There are a lot of obligations that have been fastened on many reporting entities to actually give information to the department so that quite early, in the early stages, as and when you carry out a transaction, the TDS mechanism has grown leaps and bounds. And when you deduct tax at source 194Q, 206C, what does it say? Even as you enter a transaction of sale or purchase, there has to be a tax deduction at source, which actually projects or brings into light both the parties of a transaction as far as the department is concerned. And then, you know, so much so, unlike in the previous era, the department does not require that much of time to act now once they have the information in their possession. So that is another reason why the time limit or the change was actually necessitated. Probably a very welcome feature, I would say, because looking at 234A and B on one side, any assessment that was reopened beyond 6 years or maybe even up to 6 years, and where a huge addition was being made earlier on, I think there were instances of the interest liability under 234 being more than the tax due. And it was actually being a very high burden on the department, on the assessees. So department has taken up this challenge today with the advancement of technology. They have given a fair chance. You enter into a transaction, you be honest. And they have also reduced the number of years by which reassessment is going to actually take place because of this reason that they have enough information. So it's a challenge that is openly, we will act fast. We have the capability to do that. That is what the challenge that the department is throwing at the assessees. And information, as I said, law enforcement agencies. Today, I think the other day, every other day, you will find in the television, especially in Kerala now, because a lot of scams, a lot of issues are happening. The bank, recently there was a scam in one of the banks, one of the cooperative banks down north. Within 2-3 days, you will find another news saying that the income tax department has started its inquiry, which is not the case earlier on. Earlier on, there's some material has to be found there, and then one physical letter has to go from there to this agency. Today, it is not like that. Information shared also through electronic medium itself. Suppose ED, there's a coordination between all these agencies that are working for the government. Be it an enforcement agency, suppose something that is to do with the customs or to do with income tax. Immediately, the enforcement directorate has got a mechanism. Today, they have systems in place by which these two people are alerted. And they spring into action very fast. And once you spring into an action, it's a multi agency that is inquiring into your fraud or your ill-gotten wealth, with the result that the department has said that we don't need time. They are saying that we don't need that much of time today because technologically we are so tech savvy that we don't want that much of time to probably go into and analyze all these details. There was a need to completely reform all these. So these are some of the reasons what contributed for introducing the new assessment procedure. Now, what has this done to us? I have to start forgetting things. I have to start learning new things. So we have to start unlearning so many things and start learning new things. This always happens when a new law comes into force. And quite sad, when at a time when we are understanding one law, most of us who have been practicing for quite some time, this was a point of time when we understood what was reason to believe and what was reason to suspect. We were understanding how the reason should be recorded, what is recorded is sufficient, what is not sufficient, and what the courts have held with regard to reopening. And by the time you start understanding a particular provision, the provision is gone and new provision comes in. So you have to unlearn all what you have learned and you have start learning. I keep telling this example of search because that is one area where I have specialized, and then probably any topic on that always interests me. I always felt that the block assessment concept, chapter 14 be introduced. Initially it was 16 years, later reduced to 10 years. This is a very wonderful concept of two parallel assessments happening, undisclosed income being assessed in a block period, and the regular assessments going in your regular assessments. But unfortunately, the department mixed up the block assessments. I mean, what should be the undisclosed income and the regular assessment, and the block assessment or the regular assessments were mixed up together, with the result that both assessments got intertwined. It got intertwined, and then with the result that courts started striking out, you cannot do what should be done in a regular assessment in a block assessment. As things travel with so many decisions and with so many laid down principles by various courts, both the department as well as the assessee started understanding what should be offered in a block assessment, what should be taxed in a block assessment, what should be done in a regular assessment. By then people started understanding and had better knowledge of that particular chapter 14b, that was scrapped, and you went back to 153 ABC or whatever it is. So that's why I said we have to learn and unlearn. But I mean, learn and relearn. That doesn't mean, when I say learn and relearn, many of the principles that we have already learned will govern the new law also. It is just not a total, you're not going into an amnesia, total amnesia or a dementia for that matter. But you have to start unlearning in patches. That is very critical. So you have to, many of the principles that are laid down by the Supreme Court, because it's not the law, I mean, there are certain principles in the form of law that is laid down by the Supreme Court. That principles, as far as that particular law, will continue to actually travel along even under the new provisions. For example, principles of natural justice. Despite the amendments that are being made, principles of natural justice will never change. Or all the law, settled law as far as principles of natural justice are concerned, they will continue to remain in force. Now, Kelvinator was on change of opinion, so was Rajesh Javari's talk, all famous cases rendered by the Supreme Court. And CAT versus Lucas TVS on audit objection. They had laid down principles on that. And the famous Sun Engineering case said, that was a case, a classical case of a loss being lodged by an assessing officer. Two returns for 2 assessment years, 2 returns were filed by Sun Engineering Company, Sun Engineering Works. And those returns were, both the returns were loss returns filed beyond time. And the assessing officer, after making some adjustments, he disallowed the loss because the returns were out of time. And the assessments reached a finality. The assessee did not appeal against those assessments. Subsequently, what had happened was, there was a reopening of the assessment. And when the reopening of the assessment, when the reopening came up, the assessee claimed a set-off of the loss as per the original return. So, and those days, I think the Sun Engineering Company is a very old district, 198 ITR. I mean, Supreme Court has rendered in 198 ITR. I think if I remember right, it was in a few thousand, less than a lakh. Was he, I mean, assessed income, and I think few thousand, 30,000 or 40,000 was a loss return. So assessee sought to set off this loss against the income which was around 70 or 80,000 that was assessed, and then he made a claim stating that that loss has to be set off anyway because it's a loss, and the CAT appeal said that yes, you are right. The claim of the assessee is right, because after all, what you have to be taxed is on a real income. And what is your real income? There is a loss. And once you are assessing again on a reassessment, net income is after setting off loss. No matter you forget about not filing on time and all those things. The matter traveled up to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Real income concept is all there, but as far as reopening is concerned, it is for the limited purpose of taxing the income that is chargeable to tax that has escaped assessment. There you cannot set off any matter that has reached a finality. You cannot do that. Especially in that particular case where, the return was filed out of time, otherwise the decision or the principle would have been changed. But in general, the principle laid down in Sun Engineering Company was that you cannot try to take a set off of matters that are already concluded. That was the principle that was laid down in that particular case. And finally, the classical case of GK and drive shaft, that is where the whole 148A, the beauty of the whole new section 148A is all about. Before GK and drive shafts limited issue came up, we had no way of knowing why income chargeable to tax had escaped assessment, because there is no way by which you can find out, except the fact that we may go and ask the assessing officer to give a copy of the order sheet, or at least show why the income chargeable. Because you are friendly with the assessing officer, he may probably ask you to write down, ask you to jot down the reason. But otherwise, in the statute, there is no provision that allows an assessing officer or allows an assessee to make an application to know the reasons behind reopening of an assessment. That was absent. So then what had happened when the notice for reopening of an assessment was issued by an assessing officer? An assessee wrote to the assessing officer, natural justice requires that you can't stab me on my back. You have got to give me reasons why income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. Unless you give me what is the material in your possession to say that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment, unless that is shared with me, I will not be in a position to actually file my return of income. The assessing officer refused. He said, he quoted the provisions of section 147 and said that nowhere in the act there is a provision for me to provide anything to you. And the matter went up to the Supreme Court. In GK and Shaft case said that, yes, natural justice requires that the assessing officer place the cart forward. But before that, it is onerous duty of the assessee on receipt of notice under 148 to first comply with the terms of the notice. So the assessee has to first file the return of income. And if you feel that, if the assessee feels that no income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment, let him take a chance. But if you really feel that, go through your accounts, go through the material that you think that you would have concealed. And if you think that you have concealed anything, you declare that income. And then ask the assessing officer for reason after filing the return. You don't question, you don't delay your filing of the return and come to the court on a writ and say that the proceeding should be stayed because he has not given reason. You first file the return. Then the assessee, naturally the counsel for the assessee asks the Supreme Court, if I am going to file a return, what is the remedy open? He will be making an assessment based on the material. No. There we will interfere. Once you file the return, you make an application to the assessing officer for giving you the reasons which he believes that income, according to him, income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. And the assessing officer was duty bound to give you those reasons after you comply with the terms of notice under section 148. And then the remedy for you still would be, if you feel that at that point of time, the income in his possession as shared with you does not constitute reasons to believe that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment, you have an option of going on a writ petition to the High Court and get the proceedings quashed. So it was a new law that GTN actually laid. And we're all till 31st of March 2021, we are all following that law. And that is not a law created by the statute. There are no provisions. What Supreme Court laid down was something, a provision of section 148 read with natural justice. That was accepted by the department. Fair enough. I issue a notice, yes, don't challenge me and then stall the proceedings. You file a notice. If you feel that income chargeable to tax, you pay the tax. And then I will give you the reasons. And you challenge. If I'm wrong, let the court decide on that. Now all those GT and Shaft we'll have to forget now on the 148A. We were so much used to asking for reasons. Now there's going to be a new section where whatever principles were embedded in GTN shaft, the officer is going to do ahead of you. We will see that when we come to 148A. Now, similarly, search assessments. Old search assessments, I did talk about chapter 14B. Chapter 14B was scrapped for the simple reason, again, it was a total failure as far as the revenue generation was concerned. Why is a search conducted? After all, I keep saying search is an intrusion into the privacy of a citizen. A department searching an individual or a group of people, he has got a concrete belief that somebody has hidden something, somebody is anti-national, or an evasion is taking place to such an extent. Somebody doesn't go, suppose 1 lakh tax evasion is there, nobody goes and searches a person. You're not actually disturbed. The privacy of the right to live peacefully is actually guaranteed by any constitution, our constitution. And the department does not want to infringe into your rights of privacy or of peaceful living. But at the same time, based on their investigation, if they find that you have actually, under the guise of a right to privacy, if you are actually evading tax, then for reasons to be recorded, a search could take place. Or a survey could also take place if the magnitude was not to that extent of a search. Now, this provision, 153A to C again, did not yield the desired result, even though it was scrapped and then introduced into the new block concept. Now, with this amendment, they are again doing away with this and going back to the pre-era 1922 Act or the 1961 Act. Originally, as it stood there was no provision, separate provision for taxing search assessments. Now, search assessments is again getting embedded into this 148, read with 148A. But of course, little bit of change as far as the normal escapement and search assessment, which we will be dealing with as we come to those sections. Now, both these areas, search assessment and income escaping assessment, were all matters of concern for the department. Search did not yield the result, so they wanted to scrap search. Income, reasons to believe, the normal route also did not yield the desired result. So both culminated into a thought process as far as the government was concerned, and they have substituted that with the new assessment that we will be discussing now. Now, basically, these are the sections 147 to 153. That slide shows what are those sections all about. 147 is an ingredient. Income escaping assessment is still there. That one clause is there because reassessment talks about income escaping assessment. The others are all procedure, time limit, and assessment pursuant to an order, and what are the authorities sanctioning, and transfer to faceless, so on and so forth. Now, I told you that search assessments are no more applicable. I mean, all searches conducted up to 31/3/2021 will go by the old provisions. 153A to 153C will rule forth there. Will not be governed by 153A to C. Rightly so, because in a way, we did conclude one search assessment very recently. Last time barring season, we concluded one. Out of the 6 years, probably in 1 or 2 years, there was a suspicion for an officer, but he has to issue notice for all the 6 years. He issues a notice for all the 6 years. That is the general, because appraisal report will say that, assessment year. Actually, in a search, 8 years are actually covered. Suppose search takes place in 21-22 financial year. 21-22 will be the year of search, and from 21 March onwards, 6 years backwards is the block period under 153A for which notices can be issued. And if you look at the reopening provisions as it stood in the statute, then the first year, that is the 1 year of the search, 6 years before, and the 8th year prior could be reopened under section 147, because the time limit will end only in March of the year in which the search takes place. 6 years from the end of the assessment year in which the income chargeable tax as escaped assessment. That will fall on 31st of March in the year in which the search takes place. So actually, if you talk about a block of 6 years for a search, it's actually a block of 8 years on which you are tested. And as I told you, out of the 8 years, what will happen is only 2 or 3 years I have problems. The rest of the 5 years are actually nothing, but they have to issue notice, call for all the details. I'll have to file all these things, even including the tax audit reports, everything had to be uploaded again. And then, you know, it is a useless exercise where waste of time both for the assessee as well as the taxpayer. Now that has been completely scrapped. Under the new provisions, if income chargeable to tax has escaped for a particular year, then for those years, you have to issue welcome. I would say welcome feature because you know all the procedure. Why do you want to go simply into 6 years by issue mechanical process of issuing a notice and then accepting my earlier return and then concluding an assessment after giving me an opportunity of hearing? Except probably had we been like advocates for each presentation, probably we can charge our assessee also. Other than that, I don't find anything useful purpose served either by us or for the department. Now, provisions of new 147 has been substituted by new provision whereby the AO may assess income chargeable tax which has escaped assessment for any assessment year. That's what I said. For any particular assessment year, that alone needs to be assessed. And the most important is the last one. Now, there are no conditions like recording of reasons to believe, etc., except that the assessments are subject to provisions of 148 to 153, which talks about the time limit and your sanctions and other things. There was a doubt in the earlier regime because I think the law was amended. In any case, decisions had also come. Now, what happens in a case where, for example, I reopened the assessment for issue A, for taxing issue A. I'm talking of the old provisions of section 147, reopening of assessments under the old provision. Earlier on, for taxing A, I reopened the assessment. As I was proceeding with the assessment, I find that item B, issue B is also something that has escaped assessment. Neither in my recording of the reasons I have mentioned anything about B, nor when the assessee asked me reasons recorded, I have given anything because at that point of time I am not recorded, I did not have. But as I was progressing with the assessment, I found that not only A had escaped assessment, but B had also escaped assessment. Now the assessee challenged and some courts earlier on held that no, you cannot do that. You're opening for a particular purpose of taxing A. Where is the question of your taxing B, even if it comes to your knowledge, because for the reasons recorded, you have not included B there. So you have not followed the procedure as far as the recording of reasons is concerned. B. Court said no. Finally, Supreme Court said no, it's not possible. If an assessment is reopened for a particular case, then, you know, if you find anything during the course of your travel, that can also be assessed under the reopened assessment. No need to issue a separate notice or no need that it has been included in your original assessment. Now let us imagine a contrary case. Contrary case, as the officer travels for assessing A, he finds that B is an item that should have been allowed as a deduction but was not allowed in the original assessment. Now, certain assessees claimed, no, you're taxing A fine, that is 1 lakh. But B is an item which should have been allowed to me to the extent of 50,000, which is overlooked by the assessing officer. I did not also make. So the net difference of 50,000 only should be taxed on the escaped assessment. Quite logical when you say that when you're taxing A, B comes to your notice, A plus B has to be taxed. Applying the same logic, why not A minus B when something is in my favor? Unfortunately, most of the courts held that it cannot be done because a claim not made by you cannot be made at the time of a reassessment, because reassessment is to the advantage of the department and not to give the assessee a benefit. Very strange. And all in the section but laid down by judicial principles, so much so these are law evolved as a result of judicial pronouncements. Such being the case, there is an explanation as far as the new provision 148A, it talks explanation to section 147, talks of that very clearly in the statute itself, it has been brought down. During the course of, because I'll tell you why, there are certain procedures to be followed under 148A, which we will be dealing in the next few slides. The natural question that an assessee is going to be posing the assessing officer, you have not followed the procedure with regard to an item that has subsequently come to a notice. Having not followed the procedure, like recording the reasons, there are some other procedures that we are going to discuss. When you have not followed the procedure, where is the question of your assessing that it is not possible because the statute does not? So it could go for a litigation. To avoid that, what the government in its wisdom has done is that they introduced an explanation that during the course, subsequently in the course of the assessment proceeding, if something comes to their knowledge that can be assessed. And AA is required to serve a notice on the assessee requiring him to furnish a return within such period as may be prescribed in a notice which cannot be less than 7 days and not more than 30 days. All provisions and procedures applicable for returns under 139 will apply with equal force. Now, what are the prerequisites for issue of notice under section 148? Now, you have to be very careful from here onwards because there is a change in procedure, totally the change in procedure, which we have to understand, because this is where we can question the assessing officer if on merits we are going to be weak. Now, prerequisite, first is there must be information with the assessing officer that income chargeable to taxes escaped assessment. There is no change. That is the old law as well as prima facie condition is that income, there must be belief that income chargeable to tax or information. It is not belief. That is what earlier on it was a belief, but now it talks of information in the possession of the assessing officer. So now out of the air, coin something and say that income chargeable to tax escaped assessment. Having said that, now the debate or the litigation will be on the word information. Something in the possession of the assessing officer, it's a new law, it is evolving. Suddenly you may have doubt today, sir, is this information or is that information? Courts will have to evolve whether something is information or not. So you have to actually analyze what is information, whether something you can say that, because the section very clearly says that there is information with the assessing officer which suggests that income chargeable to taxes escape assessment. So the first condition to beat something in the possession of the assessing officer, if you are able to classify that it is not information within the meaning of the act, information is not defined under the provisions of the act. It has to be coined from case laws or analogies or different similar types. I mean, under other law or the general clauses or the general dictionary meaning, you may have to do some research on that and then probably try to say that something is not information. The AA has obtained prior approval of the prescribed authority for issue of the notice. The beauty of this section, new 148A, 148A read with the whole procedure is that we will find that in 4 stages there has to be approval from superior authorities. 4 stages we will find. First stage is AA has to obtain prior approval of the prescribed authority for issue of such notice. Mind you, I am not talking of 148 notice at this stage. This is prerequisite for issuing a notice. There is information in the possession of the assessing officer which suggests that income chargeable to taxes escaped assessment. That is the first condition. Once he comes to the condition, the AA has to obtain prior approval from the authority. Then provisions of section 148 have been complied with to the extent, have to be complied with to the extent they are applicable. So here at this point of time, the notice referred to is not notice under section 148. So whatever is information that is now shared with the assessing at this point of the time. So all the GTN shaft and all is gone. You don't have to go and ask the assessing officer. The information in the possession of the assessing officer will be shared with the assessee first at this point of time after getting approval. And that information again, as I told you, should suggest escapement of income. And what it has been, it means any information flagged in the case of assessee for the relevant assessment year in accordance with the risk management strategy formulated by the CBDT. And the risk for management formulation strategy is something where you collect information from FIUs or various sources that are there, and that is also embedded in our scrutiny selection. Under CAS, this risk management plays a very vital role, because what are the cases? High sundry creditors compared to low profits. There are so many yardsticks that are being coined by the department or formulated by the department based on their experiences or based on the risk management strategy evolved by the department. So on that basis, any information flagged. Now, suppose, for example, anything abnormal in the return of income or in the case of an assessee is found out, which according to the risk management strategy formulated is against you. You are given an opportunity, and if you prove that nothing wrong, okay, your risk management strategy may be so, but still I got all evidence to say that your risk management strategy, though has triggered the button, I don't fall under that. There is no income chargeable to tax as escaped assessment. At that point of time, he has to stop. That is what the new law says. And of course, the audit objection of the CAG today, even under the new provisions, there is no respite for us. Any audit objection that has to be carried to the logical conclusion, unless when preliminary audit objections are now out of the purview now, because the final audit objection is what is mentioned in the statute. So earlier on, for preliminary audit objection also, notice under section 148 was being issued by the assessing officer. Now, only in respect of final audit objection, you need to actually issue a notice. Now, one, I talked to you about search assessments that being actually now brought under 148, read with 148A, because 132 as is scrapped. So with regard to 132A and 133, what you have to understand is that the conditions of information in the possession and all, which I have mentioned in the earlier slide, that is not applicable for search cases and survey cases and requisition cases also, where in the case of a person where money, bullion, jewelry has been seized from somebody, and there is information that it belongs to a third person, either to that person or a third person. If there is information in the possession of the assessing officer, that itself constitutes an information. And in a search, you cannot question. Okay, you come and search, but you have not found anything. Assessing officer will say, yes, but I have information in the form of so many things collected from your place. That information enables me to issue a notice to you. And tomorrow, the legislature in its wisdom, because the chunk of the collection comes from search surveys. Otherwise, the normal taxpayer pays his return. Very few cases in a scrutiny, somebody catches and then makes you pay the taxes. It gets knocked off mostly in appeal. The real collection, other than what is actually, and both these sections, both survey and search, has been automatically covered. So, issue of notice under section 148, the moment a survey takes place or a search takes place, that can trigger the concept of an information for the purpose of issue of notice under section 148. Now, that is with regard to the search. Of course, on or after 1st April 2021 only. Before that, you are governed by the old provisions. 133A, and this talks about money, bullion, jewelry belonging to the assessee and belonging to a third person. The second part of its lower half is with regard to documents, books of accounts, any other material found belonging to the other person in respect of a searched person. No, notices issued after 1/4/2021. old, prior to, I'll have problems with that. I'll come to certain issues because there's an extension of notices issued, because after 31(3) also we can issue for the old as per the ordinance amendment law that has been promulgated. There were 3 ordinances that were brought in to give extension on account of corona. Anyway, I'll be dealing with that. But your question is straight. Any notice under section 148 issued prior to 31(3)2000 will not be governed by the new provisions. Now, enquiry. When I say that, information in the possession, the assessing officer is duty bound to do his own job of conducting enquiries and all those things, before issue of a notice under. That's what I said. First is, based on the information, he can call for the assessee to furnish so that he can come to a conclusion whether income chargeable to taxes is kept as. This is what the department and the assessees expect. In many cases, for example, we dealt with the 148 case very recently before March. What had happened was that there was a small mistake that had happened in our office. While filing details for scrutiny assessment, for the assessment year 14-15, as an annexure to the proof payable in respect of ESI and PF payable, instead of 14 April, the challans were that of 14 April, but in the covering letter, we had mentioned that it is paid on 15th April. 2015 April. There was a typographical mistake. Instead of 14 April, it is shown as 15 April. Audit objected. Nobody looked at the challan. 148 notice was issued. Then we found that actually the payment had actually gone in April 2014 only. But 148 notice, since 148 notice was issued, we had to comply with 148 notice by going to the e-portal and filing a e-return showing the same assessed income, and then writing to the assessing officer asking for reasons. He gave the reason. Even before that, over the phone, I got the reason. But once he gave the reason, I again objected to that, saying that no, there is a mistake in typographical mistake. Actually, the amount is paid within the due date under 139(1), so that I am covered by explanation to section 43B. He dropped the proceedings. Now, such cases can be avoided here. Here, in this example, what will happen under the new regime would be that a notice will be served to you that I have the reason to believe that income chargeable tax has escaped us because payables were paid beyond time. I don't have to file my return and go through the hassles of e-filing and all those procedural aspects. I can straight away write to the assessing officer, no, it was a mistake. Actually, here is the proof of the challan. I have paid on time. The matter ends there. Because he wouldn't further proceed to make another inquiry for 148 whether my matter is correct or not. All simple matters like this would get settled down under the new law. Now the procedure is as follows. The AO may conduct an inquiry if required with respect to the information which suggests that income chargeable to taxes escaped assessment. Now here is where, knowing our department, what the legislature actually intends is that once an information is coming in the possession of the assessing officer, he has to conduct an inquiry to satisfy himself whether income chargeable to taxes escaped assessment. But what will really happen in reality, either notice about before conducting an inquiry, as soon as somebody gets hold of a possession or possession of some information, they will immediately send a notice to the assessee as required under this section. So inquiry will not be conducted. The burden of proving will actually be shifted at that point of time. Suppose, for example, a particular bank account is coming to the assessee, some mistake in the bank account, whatever it is, not your bank account. If only the assessing officer goes to the bank and verifies, he can find out that there is a typographical mistake in the account number and it does not belong to you. He need not send me a notice at all. But normally what will happen is now, if that information of that bank account belonging to me comes to his possession with an account number, what I envisage is that department will immediately issue a notice to me not under 148 notice, but a notice prior to that. He will send me saying that I have information in my possession. This is the information in my possession that suggests that you have not declared this bank account or the interest thereon or the credits thereon. But the legislature in its wisdom actually expects the assessing officer to make an inquiry and to conclude whether this income chargeable, whether there is income chargeable to, because the ingredient of income chargeable to tax does not go away under the new era also. And they have to provide an opportunity of being heard to the assessee by serving him a show cause notice as to why 148 should not be issued. Now, once after an inquiry, he has to issue a show cause as to why 148. Earlier on, straight away it was 148. Now a show cause has to come to you as to why 148 notice should not be issued to you for the relevant assessment here and result of inquiry conducted. The result of inquiry conducted will have to be shared with you. Okay, I went to the bank. This is the third party confirmation from the bank. You have not disclosed his bank account. Or you are having a property, sub-register has registered this. This is the extract of the sub-register. You have not declared this. This is out of your undisclosed income. That has to be given. Probably then you can come out by saying that no, that is a PAN or something. I mean, whatever, if you have a proper explanation, you have an opportunity to give. So now, looking at it from one angle, it's a welcome feature because you have provided an opportunity before an assessment to prove your innocence, if it is there. I don't have to pass through this hassle of an assessment. Normally, a 148 issue, in 90% of the cases, it results in an assessment for the reason for which the 148 has been issued. Even though the assessing officer has 100% reason to believe that what he is doing is not right. Because he is compelled to do, having issued a 148, his superior officers will ask him a question, why are you dropping it? Let them go on appeal and get it. For the fear of getting bombarded by his superiors, he would not take the risk of dropping it. But under the new provisions, an opportunity is provided now. With this opportunity, he has to go to the superior officer and then again get a permission for him to issue notice under 148. And any supervisory authority will also think twice. Suppose I am writing very strongly and saying that this is not my income or my income chargeable to tax is not escaped assessment. Court will tomorrow ask him under what capacity. You are a supervisory authority and the very purpose of sanction under the provisions of the Act is to see that the officer does not overstep. What were you doing? Were you napping? You have not exercised your authority vested in you judiciously. Courts will question him. So wherever there are issues where you cannot proceed further, at that point of time the superior authority will have to halt the person. So that is a welcome relief as far as assessee embedded in the new provision. And assessee to respond within 7 days or at this point of time, as not less than 7 days or not exceeding 30 days. I'm sorry, not 148 will be the time specified in the notice. First inquiry is what 7 days and not less than 7 days. So anything less than 7 days, you write to the officer, because in CPC you will find in faceless you are finding that somebody on 6th they will raise one token, one ticket will be raised on penalty, asking you to reply on 8th or 9th. Now here you got minimum 7 days. Minimum 7 days time should be given to you. If it is not there, the notice itself is ab initio void. Now AO needs to consider the reply furnished by the assessee if any in response to this show cause notice. AO shall then decide whether it's a fit case for issue of notice under section 148 by passing a speaking order. Of course, speaking order is not there in the section, but he cannot simply pass an order. It has to be a speaking order because he is responding to the answers given by the assessee. Suppose somebody objects, and assessee says that once a notice is issued and assessee objects, he has to meet those objections and then pass a speaking order. Notwithstanding your objections, this is what convinces me that income chargeable to tax has escaped assessment. And where assessee has not responded, the order shall be passed within 1 month from the end of the expiry of the period allotted to the assessee. That is the time limit. Now the copy of the order shall be is required to be served along with the notice under section 148. Of course, again now it will be on the last known address in the email portal, the IT portal. 151A provides a faceless assessment. That is also now anything under 148 will go to faceless. Now procedure conducting inquiry procedure provided in section 148 is not applicable in the following cases. I told you it's not applicable in search cases or in requisition cases. I did mention about you in the earlier slides. Now let's look at the time limits. Time limit for issuing under 148 type of cases. We did talk about a lower time limit. Now the time limit has been reduced from 6 years to 3 years. But in certain exceptions, you got 10 years. What are those exceptions? In a case, if the AO is in his possession, books of accounts or other documents which reveal that income chargeable to tax represented in the form of asset. Now, there will be a question, what is an asset? Whether it is a financial asset. I given as a footnote, explanation to section 149 defines asset to include immovable properties being, it's an inclusive definition. To include immovable properties being land or building or both, shares or securities, loans and advances, deposits in bank account. It's an inclusive definition. So anything, again, as I talked to you about information, you may have to distinguish something. You can say that it is not an asset. But asset has got a very wide gambit. Tangible, intangible, material, immaterial, corporeal, non-corporeal, all these things will be tested. So if it is not representing in the form of asset, which has escaped assessment amount or likely to amount of rupees 50 lakhs or more for that year, then you got 10 years. Now, one question that struck me, I don't have the answer. Probably we can share during our question and answer session. During a search, the search party gets information from the person searched that a sum of rupees 60 lakhs was spent as marriage expenses of the daughter over and above what is declared in this return of income or in his accounts. While thought for me, it's an expenditure that has been incurred. The search reveals expenditure. I'll quickly go once again go through the AO has in its possession books of accounts or other documents. Yes, he has got, or evidence which reveal that income chargeable to tax represented in the form of an asset which has escaped assessment or is likely to amount of rupees 50 lakhs or more for that year. A normal reading of this will say, I would like to go by say that it will not be taxable. But I'm not very sure whether the department is going to leave you like that. Certainly because expenditure cannot be equated to an asset. But having said that, what is the purpose of the search? To unearth undisclosed income. And undisclosed income will certainly include unexplained expenditure. Now, can't the department say that asset in the form of cash was actually spent by you, but we have information about an asset, namely cash, generated by you and spent by you. But I would counter saying that, which reveal that income chargeable tax represented in the form of asset which has escaped assessment. Very thin lining. I would say to say that it is not in existence, but the word, nowhere in the act it says that it should be in existence. But by and large, if you go by the old 147 provisions, it gave a, beyond 6 years, there was a 10-year period under the old 147 in respect of immovable properties. And again, going by the explanation that I have kept, asset to include immovable properties being land, building, both shares and securities, loans and advances, deposits in bank account. Now, I will go further step by saying that in the example quoted by me, had it been cash, better chance, but had it been a deposit in a bank account, withdrawn and spent for the purpose of marriage, my case may stand a little weaker in view of the explanation to section 149. These are all wild thoughts that are going in. I think courts will have to interpret all these issues that may be coming up in the new section. Now, time limit for issuing notice under section 147 shall not be issued for any assessment years beginning on or before the 1st April. That answers Biju's question. If such notice could not have been issued at that time on account of being beyond time, so that is different, not on the question which you have asked. You cannot issue a notice under 149 as on 1st April if the notice otherwise could not have been issued under the old act. Under this act also you cannot issue. So in relation to search requisition initiated on or after the 31st March, the erstwhile provisions of 153A, as I already discussed, in such cases newly allotted shall not apply. Now, time limit for computing period of limitation, the time or extended time allowed by the court, etc., stayed and normal procedure which are even after assessment order is stayed, the period during which the stay is granted by the court is excluded. And if the residual period available to the assessing officer after the above exclusion is less than 7 days for passing an order, such remaining period shall be extended to 7 days. For example, somebody goes to the court, it's only 3 days extension is there, then it will get an extension of 7 days. I told you there are 4 instances in the new procedure where approval has to be taken. And if only our superior authorities are very careful in exercising this jurisdiction of granting approval, I think things should be quite rosy for the assessee. But I don't think it is going to be, because even today, under the faceless scheme, approvals have to be taken at the several stages for even issuing a show cause notice to the assessee. What is happening today? Left, right, and center notices are being issued for bombarding amounts, for amounts I mean, the proportions of which unimaginable. And you know, is it because of lack of supervisory control over them? Supervisory officer themselves say that let them go on appeal and get it. I don't want to take my risk out for it. Now, what are the 4 instances? For conducting an inquiry if required with regard to the information suggesting escape and income. At that point of time, to conduct an inquiry, he needs to get the approval of the superior authority. For providing an opportunity of being heard to the assessee on the show cause notice prior to the issue, on the show cause notice prior to the issue of 148. There also he has to get a sanction under 148AB and passing an order to decide whether or not it's a fit case for issue of notice under section 148. At that point of time, the 3rd approval, and for issuing a notice requiring the assessee to furnish return of income, again another 4th. So passing the order after considering the reply, whether the conclusion is correct, and then again for issue of notice under 148. So all 4 stages are there where approvals are required. Now, authorities for sanction of issuing notice under section 148 and conducting inquiry under 148. Director or commissioner of income tax. More than 3 years, it's the principal chief commissioner of income tax or the chief commissioner or the principal director general or the DGIT as a case. Now, some recent case laws. Now, having come to that, you know what had happened, because this year the law came in, but then things were restoring to normal when the budget, when the finance bill 2020-21 was introduced by the finance minister in the parliament. We never expected a second wave, or we never thought that the pandemic is going to strike back with a second wave. So obviously, on 1st of February, when the new section was enacted, there was no contemplation of an extension beyond 31st of March 2021. But fate decided otherwise, and there was necessity for the department to extend various procedures with regard to issue of notices. The first time they extended up to 30th of June, and then they again extended up to 39. In between, I think one extension also came by extending the time limit for assessments up to 30th of April. So 3 ordinances were actually promulgated by the government, by which, those are executive instructions by which time limit for compliance with various provisions of law were extended. Now, the larger question was that what really this extension of time limit actually granted to the assessing officer was, what notice I was to issue as on 31/3/2021, I got a lease, extension of lease up to 36/2021. So the assessing officer in his wisdom said that whatever notices were otherwise issuable up to 31/3/21 with regard to reopening of the assessments would be governed by the prior law, because any notice issued up to 31/3/21 had to go by the old law. Now that it has been extended, old law, the old 147 would continue. I keep telling our professionals are very intelligent. They took the matter on a writ. Started with Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court, Calcutta High Court. All metros started first. Of course, the matter has come up to the Kerala High Court also. Notices issued under 148 prior, for periods prior to, post 1/4/2021, relying on these ordinances were challenged. And the challenge that was posed by these taxpayers were very simple. What did they say? They said the ordinance only permitted the assessing officer, or it gave an extension of lease for issue of notice only. But what has turned out into an enactment by Finance Act 2021 is something which is a procedural law. So the procedures to be followed will have to be necessarily followed. You may have, as per the ordinance, you may get an extended lease of life for only issue of notice. But as far as 148A is concerned, Act very clearly says that any notice issued after 1/4/2021, for those notices, provisions of 148A will be applicable. And what does 148A say? You have to have information in the possession, you have to share the information with the assessee, call for his objections, go through all those approval stages, consider my objections, pass a speaking order, then only issue notice. Have you complied with all these things? Spate of all these decisions, it has gone up to these several high courts, and they have said that they have all under stay. There is no decision that has come, but courts are very openly. I will just read what is the finding of the court in this particular case. Petitioner challenges the issue of notice under section 148 as invalid and void from inception, as they were issued without following the procedure laid down under 148A. Assessors were very careful. The representatives, the advocates were very careful. They never said that issue of notice under 148 is wrong. Because by ordinance, you have every right to issue notice under 148 till 36/2021. You got every right to do that. But you should have followed the procedure under 148A, because it's an act now. Any notice issued after 1/4/2021, you should have followed 148A. Having not done that, issue of notice is 148. Under 148 is ab initio void. Because any procedure that is laid under the act has to be followed. And what did the court say? Finding the court was of the prima facie view that the impugned notification is contrary to settled principles of statutory interpretation. Namely, that any action taken post the amendment of a procedural section would have to abide by the new procedure stipulated in the Amendment Act. The view that by virtue of a notification which is a delegated legislation, the date for implementation of statutory provision as stipulated in the Act cannot be varied or changed. So you cannot by an executive instruction or by a ordinance supersede or override the past Finance Act under both houses of the Parliament and having received the assent of the President. You cannot override. All those procedural law cannot be overridden by means of a ordinance. That is what the principles that these high courts have laid down. We'll have to wait and see. And day before SMN or probably yesterday, I'm not sure yesterday or day before yesterday, another taxation law recent, because section 9 or some other sections were amended, wherein arbitration, because there was a challenge on Section 9 and it went to the International Court on arbitration. And it was represented to the government that because of these cases that have been, some 18 cases are pending in different high courts. And because of those cases pending, foreign investment is not coming into India. So to get over that, there is an amendment. I was expecting when I saw the Taxation of the Amendment Act, I thought 148 there would be something like that. It's not there. So in fact, as I understand from the department, the CBDT and the Finance Ministry have gathered information from various ranges, from the various commissionates, asking how many people have challenged this 147, 148, what are the notices that are available. So probably there could be something, after analyzing all these things, there could be something must be in the pipeline, because otherwise as things stand, as the court see this ordinance cannot be actually carried out for issuing notice. So after post 1/4/2021, all these notices that are issued could get struck down. Friends, I think with these few items to share, few sections and few thoughts that I share with you, I think I've come to an end of my presentation. Hope my deliberations were quite useful in understanding the new provisions of 148 read with 148A. And I must thank the Alleppey branch for once again for having given me an opportunity to share. As I told you, each time you go through, even now we discuss certain points, each time you go through that, you get into so many areas of doubt, you get into so many areas of new wisdom or new interpretation that could probably come into a section. And it's been a wonderful experience as far as this particular 4 topics were concerned, traveling with you all. I hope these subjects were quite useful to all of you. Of course, I thank my entire team for having supported me with all these materials and in making my job easy. 2 of them are here, and some of the students have also done some research for taking this case. So I thank all of them for having supported me, for making all these 4 presentations meaningful, and I hope you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I'm open for some questions and answers.
Can I speak, Japa?
Yes, sir.
Anna, the question is that you had spoken about the Black Money Act. Now the asset which is already assessed under Black Money Act, whether it can be assessed again under 148A?
Under 148, you want assessment under 1? Yeah, reopening can be done.
But the question is that it is already assessed under Black Money Act.
There is no prohibition under the Income Tax Act that says that once it is assessed under the Black Money Act, then there is a immunity under the Income Tax Act.
So you have to pay tax twice?
As things stand, yes.
So it is not double taxation?
No, for under the provisions of different act. That is what when I was dealing with Black Money Act, I had specifically mentioned that both are, one is to tax the income and one is to have a control over the black money.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, PPT will be shared. I think last PPT also has to be shared. 2 PPTs will have to be shared to the branch. I will do that. Sir, in case of receipt of SC and the SC finds that he has missed something in ITR, does he have any remedy available to pay taxes, revise or file fresh ITR and avoid further proceedings and penalty? See, in case of, sir, in case after receipt of SCN, show cause notice, SC finds that he has missed something in ITR, does he have any remedy available to pay tax? I think, Dinesh, I think you'll have to unmute yourself. Is this in respect of a faceless assessment that is going on? Dinesh, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So, sir, this is just my question, not a specific case, because last time ഒരു കുറച്ച് SB ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് ഒക്കെ ഇൻകം ടാക്സിൽ റിട്ടേണിൽ കാണിച്ചിട്ടില്ലായിരുന്നു. ഇപ്പൊ ആ 31 കുറെ നോട്ടീസ് വന്നായിരുന്നല്ലോ. ആ ടൈമിൽ നമുക്ക് റിട്ടേൺ റിവൈസ് ചെയ്ത് ഫയൽ ചെയ്തിട്ട് ഒരു ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അപ്പൊ ഈ കേസിൽ സ്റ്റോക്ക് ഓഫ് നോട്ടീസ് വന്നു. അപ്പോഴാണ് അസിക്ക് മനസ്സിലായത് ഓക്കെ ഞാനൊരു കാര്യം വിട്ടുപോയി. അസിക്ക് ഇപ്പോൾ ടാക്സ് അടച്ചിട്ട് ക്ലോസ് ചെയ്താൽ കൊള്ളാമെന്നുണ്ട്.
അല്ല, ഇതിനകത്തിപ്പോ പുതിയ 270 ക്യാപിറ്റൽ എയിലെ പെനൽറ്റിയിൽ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ട് ടു എസ്കേപ്പ് ബിക്കോസ് യു നോ it is as per the provisions of the section, if there is going to be an assessment of a higher amount on the income returned by you, then the penalty is almost automatic if it is misreporting of income. Underreporting, provided it comes under that 270 capital A 6 and 9 അകത്ത് വരുവാണെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ it will be hit by that. Now the question is, tax, one way of escape route is that you pay the taxes upfront before the assessment is completed. But immunity from penalty you may have to fight because adinathu tax adachale namak immunity kittunnu nerthe before the search if you report to the commissioner, then on that there was no penalty. Correspondingly under 270A there is no provision for an escape route. So even if you want to come clean, there is no opportunity available at this point of time. So all you can do is you can pay the taxes and then try to say that it's a bona fide omission. There is nothing intentional or willful. Pay the taxes thereon, and then when penalty matter comes up, you can say that, because if you don't have a provision to revise a return, I don't think a penalty you can escape. 270A is worded like that. Clear or no? I think is this the answer? Okay.
കാരണം STM എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ ഒരു അഡീഷണൽ ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റി തരുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പൊ അസിക്ക് ഒരു അവരുടെ STM ചെയ്യുന്നതിന് മുമ്പ് തന്നെ കുറെ അധികം അപ്രൂവൽസ് ഒക്കെ എടുക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ സാർ. എന്നാലും
there is a provision either agree to the addition made എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ഒരു ക്ലോസ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ. SCN you may either agree to the addition or file your objections or partially agree എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു 3 കണ്ടീഷൻ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അല്ലെ, ഈ ഷോക്കോസ് നോട്ടീസിൽ ഫേസ്ലെസ്സില് ദിനേഷ് കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ അല്ലേ?
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട് സാറേ. എനിക്ക് നോട്ടീസ് ഒന്നും കിട്ടിയിട്ടില്ല. ജസ്റ്റ് ഒരു എന്റെ പഴയൊരു 148 വന്നത്, എന്നാലും ഞാൻ ജസ്റ്റ് ചോദിച്ചതേ ഉള്ളൂ സാറേ.
അല്ല, ഇതിപ്പോ 148 എഗെയിൻസ്റ്റ് ആണ് ഈ പറയുന്നത്.
അല്ല, എനിക്ക് ഇപ്പൊ പുതിയതിലല്ല, 31 മുമ്പ് വന്ന 148.
അല്ല, 148 നമ്മൾ in response to 148 if you declare the income, I think you have a better chance, because അവിടെയും income originally declared and reassessed തമ്മിലുള്ള ഡിഫറൻസിന് പെനൽറ്റി വരാം as per the act. But if you show and then you pay the taxes, you get a better chance of an immunity or a penalty getting dropped at least, provided you are able to prove that you come under that exclusions under 270 capital A 6 or 9.
Okay sir. Okay, thank you sir.
Okay, any more questions? Thank you for all those who have been watching online. Thank you so much.
First, at the cost of provided profit, we will take 1 minute. I request CM R.P. Joseph to propose formal actions.
Respected Chairman, CA Rajneesh Shamurthy. Respected faculty of the day, Sri Krishnan, my dear fellow chartered accountants. Today, Krishnan sir completed the third hours therapy. So, it was really a wonderful session. I already explained the details in my faculty impression and not extending. Once again, thank you very much for your kindness and sharing your knowledge. I also thank all the members who joined for this program. Thank you.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मागे गाहे तव जय गाथा जनगण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे